Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for making the journey down today. I actually heard of you, first of all, on my friend's podcast, Coleman.
Yeah.
And I saw a little reel and it struck me. And from that, I went on to Googled you, and I've been listening to the podcast that you've been on. You've been on loads. And I just think your message is just incredible. And I think the biggest thing for me was I felt you are just so passionate about your job and passionate about helping people. So selfishly, I was like, I'm getting Padraig onto the podcast to help me. So all the listeners out there, you enjoy it too, but this is for me. So thank you so much. You've got a really, really deep background in, helping people through trauma and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to dive straight in. And can you chat to us about how our past traumas and the things that we've been through kind of results in the person that we show up as today?
It's a really layered question that we could probably speak for hours on. So I'll kind of jump into maybe a few different components of it. So from the lens of an OT, we always look at how trauma impacts how we experience the world. So from a sensory perspective, how sound, taste, touch, smell, all of these can be impacted. How our body awareness is, all of those components from the lens of an OT. From the psychology component, you could look at attachment styles, which I think is actually really relevant for people. So I don't know if you know much about the attachment styles and that process, but I can talk a little bit about that. So Bowlby and Ainsworth, they looked at the attachment styles that we all have that are created in our early childhood development. And a lot of people that are impacted by trauma might have a disorganized attachment. There's anxious attachment, there's ambivalent attachment, and the one that we all want is secure attachment. So how they assess this process when we're younger is they put a person into a toddler with their caregiver. That could be a father or mother. It tends to be with the mom. As we spoke earlier, they they tend to take on those roles and do it really well. So with that component, what they do is they assess the child's ability to develop a secure attachment with their caregiver. When the mother will leave the room and the toddler is there left in the room, they'll be assessing how the toddler gets distressed. They might have another stranger in the room as well that might try and comfort the toddler. If the toddler gets somewhat distressed, but when the parent re-enters or the caregiver re-enters, that the child can be comforted by the caregiver. That's a sign of secure attachment. I'm not going to get into the details of all the rest of them, but it'll have a very different response. The child might get very, very overwhelmed and reject the mother when the mother comes back. The child mightn't even notice when the mother leaves the room. And that's a sign that maybe the child is having to get used to that space where they're being left neglected. So that attachment style can really impact every aspect of our life, how we build relationships, friendships. So are we going to be securely attached to our partner? Are we going to be securely attached to our friends? Are we going to be always anxious in the space of trying to build relationships, friendships, however that looks? And all of that happens through that early childhood experience. So it's massive. So that is a huge component. And you can look at other aspects as well, that fight, flight, freeze response. If somebody's always anxious, they're always in danger, they're always worried, their interpretation of the world might be a really dangerous place. So how they respond mightn't be seen as, even in a sense of safety, they might feel like things are really dangerous. So our whole world can be shaped by having a positive early childhood experience. It is immense. Gabor Mate would always say, if you put the effort into the first 3 years, you can relax for the rest of your life. That they'll be fine. He says, if you fuck up in the first 3 years, you're going to spend the rest of your life working really, really hard. And I think I spoke of before in a podcast, Dr. Bruce Perry, he really emphasizes actually the first 2 months. He says the first 2 months hold more power than the first 12 years. So he's like, if you can give a child a positive first 2 months of their life, and for the next 12 years they are experiencing trauma, they will do better in their adulthood than that young person who's experienced trauma for the first 2 months of their life and for the next 12 years. So that is an incredible space. And I would see that time and time again. I work with a lot of foster carers who do amazing work, and they've been working with these young children since they were 2 or 3 months old, where they've taken out of this traumatic experience, but their life has been full of hardship and sadness, depression, anxiety, self-harm. And to look at the surface, you're like, but they've been in a loving home since they were so young. But actually, a lot of the trauma has been felt very, very young. It can even happen in utero as well.
Yeah, that's crazy that you say that, because the whole attachment style thing, like when I started going down that road of like self-improvement and figuring out why I act the way I act, I came across that, and it's so obvious in my relationship. When I look back, I'm like the needy one. I'm like, show me you love me. And my wife is like, get away from me. You know, she's so secure in herself.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
I'm better now. But as we were speaking about earlier, like I'm constantly like trying to get all of this information to try and, you know, as I said, not fuck up my kids and try and be the best parent possible, which is impossible. We're going to fuck them up in some way, but hopefully not as bad as maybe other people. But I have been listening to a lot of Gabor Mate's stuff and reading his books and stuff like that. And it's just eye-opening to think that the way or the love or the, I suppose, care, support, all of those things that we give to kids so early on has such an impact later on. Because like, the traumas that I faced in the past and stuff, I only in the last couple of years started to realise that's the reason I was showing up as that type of person. And like, I think it's so empowering when people realise, you know, okay, I might be repeating this pattern and it's a negative one, but it's not really my fault. You know, it's just how I cope with what's going on in my head, with the things that have happened to me in the past. And that word cope is I just love it, because I realised, you know, what I was doing in the past, so being a perfectionist, trying to control all my surroundings and stuff, that was a coping mechanism, and it actually kept me alive, you know, for that period of my life till I was ready to go get help and then, you know, fix these or you know, I suppose live out these patterns in a more positive light. I actually say that because of what you said before we went on air. You were like, we were talking about controlling. You asked me, do you think your kind of controlling behaviour is all negative? And I said, yes. And you were just like, well, it's not really if it's helping you run a business. And I never really looked at it like that. So that's just eye-opening. But can you talk to us about coping mechanisms and like how would you start to change or start to realise, okay, I'm acting this way because of what happens and what do I do now? What do I do next?
So like, I think we have to look at the person and how they're functioning. First and foremost, do they see it as an issue? And we spoke about this prior as well. Like, we might see somebody having this life that isn't serving them and they're falling into a hole and they might feel things are out of control. Are they willing to change these patterns themselves? So first and foremost, if they come to you and they're like, I need support, I need help, and these are areas that I'm really struggling. Without that, I would just say stop. Like, I would do some psychoeducational pieces with young people, and what that means is showing them the risks of leaning into certain behaviours, and hopefully that it might open their mind if it's drugs, alcohol, pornography, what that might look like. But inherently, if they don't see it as a problematic behaviour, they have to do a lot of work to change it, so they won't change. So I think first and foremost, if they're willing to lean into that space. And then I am very interested in function. So looking at behavior and looking at it, does it function for you? And if it doesn't, how do we fix that? So like the coping strategies, we all have them. We all lean into things that make us feel uncomfortable when we're a little bit awkward, whether that's picking up our phone when we're standing at a queue because it's like it soothes us. If we're suffering to a high level, we might lean into things like alcohol, drugs, pornography, gambling, anything else to give us a sense of escape. Those behaviors become really problematic because they will have these really negative impacts on the other aspects of your life. They'll break down relationships. They'll cause more pain, and then we are drawn towards it in a deeper level because while it soothes pain, it creates it. So then we lean into it then to get that further. So it's trying to break those cycles and instilling hope. If you can give somebody hope that if they lean into these positive changes, that things will get better. I think that's the greatest tool. When somebody comes and they're hopeless, it's very difficult to support them. And how I will often, like I work with a lot of young people who are, at the moment are engaging in self-harm, suicidal ideation, but I relax a little bit when they come through the door because there's a part of them that believes that hope is there and there is help. And then I often see great success because of that. So hope is, I'm always listening to that language. Do they believe that hope is there? And they may not have it, but if the fact that they're engaging in the conversation is a sign.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, you know, it's hard to accept that we can't change anyone, we can't fix anyone. And, you know, people who, you know, you love the most in the world, you see them like having these negative behaviors that are harming themselves, and all you want to do is fix them. So yeah, I love that, because when I was kind of at my darkest point, I've said it on the podcast before, I thought I was fine. And my mom came to me one day, and she's just amazing. And she was like, please, can you go get help? And I was like, I'm fine. What are you on about? I'm grand. And she said, just go once, go to therapy once, and you don't have to ever go again. And I went, and I'd never spoken to someone before who knew nothing about me. And therefore I was kind of like, oh, there's not going to be this judgment, because you think people like are judging you the whole time. You think people care? Like nobody cares really
Nobody
about
gives a shit.
Yeah, they're too busy dealing with their own shit, you know. So I went in and I just said everything, and I just this weight off my shoulders. And it was only when that therapist said to me, "Shit, Kellie, you've been through such, you know, a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma," that I kind of went, "Oh, I have." But because I mentioned on the podcast with Brian Keane before, we all think, but it's only everybody has it worse. You know, I was thinking when my boyfriend, when I was 19, took his life and I found him in his bedroom. After that happened, I was like, but his mom is going through so much worse or more than I am. His sisters are, you know, I'm only. And I think, you know, a lot of times we can think that way. But that all came about from you just saying there that, you know, you can't fix people, but you also said you can give them hope. And that's what my mom did that day. She just, you know, pushed me a little bit to go. And I obviously then accepting to go to therapy knew in the back of my mind that I did need help and that I could kind of live a better life. A lot of the stuff that you talk about that links kind of into that is people can go through the same things in life, but they can have a different reaction, I suppose, off the back of it. And you said in a podcast before, it's not what happens to us, but it's what happens in us.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a good example about if a school burned down, you know, the firefighter would go in, they'd put out the fire, come home, and their life would be fine. But for a kid in that school, it could have, you know, an impact on the rest of their life in terms of feeling safe and stuff like that. So can you chat to us about, you know, we all react differently. We all kind of react differently to situations, and then that results in how we play out, I suppose, the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And I think you gave a really good example, even just tried to, like, you minimized your own lived experience looking at your boyfriend's parents' experience, what was like for them. So you minimized yourself to try to, and that's just a coping strategy to try to survive through it, because it is really hard. So not maybe addressing your own emotions through it, but like our lens on an environment is everything. Me and you sitting in a room, we could have a completely different experience coming in here. One of us might be like high strung or anxious, and the other might be super relaxed. We're both sitting in the same space, but it's just our mindset is different in what that might look like. And the firefighter is a really good example. I think like we can be in a situation, but if we have a job, a task, a role, or we know why we're there. And I think for a lot of people through trauma, and I can touch on post-traumatic growth, which I think is really important, one of the greatest tools that they have is curiosity in that. So they're looking at a situation where hardship has happened and they're like looking at it as a learning opportunity. Okay, this happened to me, but what now? And why do I respond this way? And being really curious versus falling into that kind of concept of hardship. Why does this have to happen to something like this have to happen to me? And looking for blame rather than looking for a solution. And that's that can be a massive difference in the trajectory of your response to it. So really being curious around experiences.
Yeah, that's what actually my therapist said to me once, and I didn't understand it the first time, but when she kept saying it, I was like, okay, there must be something here. She was like, Kellie, I want you to approach things, or, you know, the kind of what's going on inside your head, the way you talk to yourself, with curiosity instead of judgment. Because my whole life I was judging myself, and I think we all do. I think we can be our own worst enemies. And what I've tried to do in the last, you know, 4 or 5 years on this self-development journey is to approach myself with compassion and speak to myself the way I would speak to a best friend. And it's so hard to do because we've been doing the opposite for so long. Like we speak to ourselves just horribly. We say things to ourselves we would never, ever say to another human being, even if we hated them, you know? So it's switching that, because how can you get the best out of yourself if you talk to yourself horribly?
Yeah.
Because like I truly believe that, you know, we believe the stories that we tell ourselves, even if they're completely false, you know. So it's starting to change the narrative, you know. And I come from an actual neuroscience background. I have a degree in neuroscience, and it's all about like, I love linking it to what I do now. So I say to my clients, you want bigger biceps, go and do bicep curls every day for the next X amount of time. If you want to start changing the way you talk to yourself, it's uncomfortable, but you have to start. And what happens is every single day you start to talk to yourself a little bit better. You're starting to, you know, rewire those pathways in your brain, neuroplasticity, and it just becomes a bit easier until it's now your default setting, you know? So my default setting all those years ago was, Kellie, you're a piece of shit. You know, Mark couldn't stay here because like he couldn't even stay here because of you. You were supposed to be his partner. All of these things, like, and then it resulted in me trying to prove to people that I was the best. To now, you know, I'm have compassion. Yes, I'm still working on it, but like I like the person I am. I don't think I'm a piece of shit. I think I am like a nice person, you know. But that transition, like when I talk to clients about this stuff, because I started off as a personal trainer, online coach, and now I feel like I'm more like a bloody therapist. You know, I get to know clients on such a deep level, and when I'm trying to, you know, get them to do this stuff and be like, you have to be kinder to yourself, all these things, they're like, but like, how did you get to that point? And I'm like, it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But it is about starting, and yes, it's going to be uncomfortable when you actually don't, you know, talk to yourself badly. But the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. There's loads that you said there. How do you speak to yourself? What kind of things do you say about yourself?
I'm a good mother. And I think we mentioned it earlier, you know, I had, when the girls arrived, this is the person I am. When my girls arrived, I immediately start being anxious because I wanted to control their life. They were 2 years old in the NICU, and I was saying to my mum, but what if they get bullied at school? Like, that's crazy to think of. But now I flip that and I'm like, the fact that I'm worried about them shows that I'm a good mom. You know, I am a good partner. We've lasted 13 years, so I must be doing something right. I also am good at my job. Like at the start, when I started coaching people, and I get feedback, because now I look at my job as much more from a mindset point of view. Like, anyone can follow a plan, you know, but why haven't you been doing that? You know what to do, but why aren't you doing it? So at the start, when I started going into this side of coaching, people used to be like, Kellie, it's changing my life, all of these things. And I used to show Mo the message, and be like, what the fuck are they talking about? And I used to reply to clients and say, I can't believe you're talking about me, you know, because not believing all of these things, but through doing that over the past 5-6 years, I'm like, no, I am a good coach. Amazing. You know, and I will be better, because self-improvement, we're all doing it. Exactly. You know, you're not supposed to be the same person you are. But yeah, being compassionate, like, even, you know, I think if someone was to say to me 5 years ago that I would be saying those things now, I'd be like, you're fucking mad. You are nuts. Would you stop? Go away with yourself. So yeah.
You said loads there. I'm so curious. I want to ask more questions. But I just think that kindness to yourself, and it takes a long time. And I do think it has to be cultivated. Like, we can cultivate optimism and we can cultivate pessimism, and we can make choices in this. And it's just about, you had an abundance of evidence in front of you to show that you're a good mom, that you're a good partner. 13 years is a good sign that you're a good wife, that you can do those things, and an abundance of messages to show that you are a good coach and you're having a huge impact. I think the way to change this viewpoint is start developing evidence and proof to say, I am good, I am kind, the world is a beautiful place. And it's about opening our eyes to seeing that. We can cultivate optimism by changing our mindset from being a pessimist to an optimist. That is something that we have to actually work on, because you're right. The natural form for our brain to think is in a negative way. We have to look for danger. We've been built that way. So we're in a time in our life where we have an abundance of resources and abundance. We can soften that negative component, and we can really cultivate optimism. gratitude is a fantastic way, looking at all the things that you have, looking at evidence to challenge your pessimistic attitude as well. So if you're like, people don't like me, do you have close people around you? Is there evidence to say that this is true? And if there isn't evidence, and if there is evidence to say this is true, then what's your role in that to fix that? If you're not having enough friends, are you a good enough friend towards people? So what is your role? Empower yourself in these spaces for change. But I think the curiosity component of questioning these things, pessimism is important in a very few situations where we're trying to watch risk, like if you're flying a plane and there's 500 kilometers in the tank and that optimistic guy and your destination is 505 and you're like, I'm going to make it, and then you crash. I think at that time, pessimism is okay. But in general, optimism is the way forward. If we can see that even if things go wrong, there's a space for learning, there's a space for growth. If we look for opportunities and we believe that they're there, we're going to see them. They're actually all around. So I think it's looking for that evidence. And if it comes to having a really negative mindset about yourself, there is a strategy that I would have seen some therapists apply. So when you have these feelings towards yourself, to pick up your phone and record your voice speaking. If you were imagining that you went out one night and you said something stupid to a friend and you regretted it, how would you speak to your friend if they were in that situation and they were questioning that? So if you're like, you're such an idiot, why would I do that? Pick up the voice note and send it to yourself and speak out loud and speak all these negative thoughts and listen to what that would be like to hear that from a friend, from a best friend. Or would you speak to your best friend that way? And really try to reframe that, really question, really challenge those negative thoughts. And I think that can be really good because you listen back to the harshness of that voice and you're like, oh no, nobody needs to hear this. And that's the voice that can go on repeat all the time. But saying things out loud, having a therapist is great. Saying things out loud opens up an opportunity to question these thoughts. If you ruminate and you sit and you don't speak about these negative behaviors, these negative patterns, you've no one to challenge or question it. So you just sit in the room and the only person that you got to challenge or question it is that pessimistic person that's living in your head that's going to agree with everything that you're saying. Yeah, you're right. You are a piece of shit. Yeah, you're not worthy and life isn't that good. So I think it's jumping out that space, saying it out loud, finding somebody who is going to listen and challenge that perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned something there as well about avoiding, which is another coping mechanism that I had all those years. It's like, just pretend it's not happening and avoid. But I think, and I had my mom on the podcast actually, people got a little bit of more an insight into me. But like she was saying, when we were talking about it, you just avoid, like it's so much easier to avoid all the shit that's going on rather than deal with it. But I think when you avoid what's going on underneath in your head, all of these things, you're just pressing it down and it comes up. So for that period of my life, when I was 19 to when I was 29, I avoided it. Like Mo used to say to me, this is happening, this bad thing. And I'm like, sorry, I don't want to hear about it. It's fine. And literally, she's like, how can you do that? And I was avoiding. And then it just came to a massive big head when I was 29, when I was just like, so lost, so down. Just, I couldn't find happiness in anything. So yeah, I think the first step, and we spoke about it earlier, is that the person has to want to change and has to want to deal with things that are going on. And we've been talking about trauma and stuff like that. And I think, and it is a little bit harsh, it might sound harsh, but we are not responsible for all of the things that happened in our past. Like, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I've had the worst life ever, because there's people out there who have so much worse, and then there's people who haven't, but it's all, we only can see it from our own perspective because we only have our own experiences and that's all we can, reference it to. So we're not responsible for those things because a lot of things happened when we were kids. How can we be responsible? But we are responsible with how we deal with them and getting to the bottom of them, because you have a choice in every scenario. And a lot of people can use the things that happened in the past to keep them stuck in their current situation. And it can be, heard it before, presented like this, playing the victim. And not in a bad way, but I suppose it's a coping mechanism, playing the victim and saying, I'm here, or I'm in this, this is my life now and it's shit because of what happened to me in the past. Or the other option is like, yes, that happened to me in the past. Wasn't it horrendous? It wasn't my fault, but I'm not going to use that to then limit me and limit my potential. And I'm actually going to go after what I want and I'm not going to stay stuck.
I think people look at that as, oh, that is a harsh response, but I actually think it's such an empowering response. Like, if you were to say that you're a victim and it's now your responsibility to fix it, isn't that a beautiful thing, that you are responsible and that you have the power? Like I think it is a hard sentence for people to hear, but it's something that I advocate all the time, because for sure we have hardship. But as an adult, we have a level of responsibility. With the responsibility comes empowerment. So you're not disempowered by your past anymore. This is up to you, and you can have a change and you can fix this. That's a beautiful thing. And I totally resonate with that. How we identify ourselves, whether it's a survivor or a victim or a thriver, is going to be a huge part in our actions that we take in our life, our belief systems, and our lens of how we look at the world. So I think sitting in the space where we want to blame others actually completely disempowers us, because then other people control our lives, other people control our emotions, other people control our behaviors. It's not theirs, it's actually ours. And like the gift book that you were referenced earlier, like she speaks so beautifully in that, and speaks about forgiveness and how that's such a powerful tool. And for her, she lost I can't think of her.
Edith Edgar.
Yes. She spoke about how all of her family had been killed, and how she had forgiven the people that had done that, because she's like, they don't own the power. If I don't forgive, I'm still in that prison. They still own me. And she's like, I'm not giving them that. And that is a beautiful thing. It's that release. It's that this is my life and I've got control and I can do whatever I want. And that power is in everybody. They just have to see it.
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it, sometimes to forgive people. But just that you mentioned it there, I heard before, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like hatred, or, not forgiving someone is literally like holding a hot coal and expecting it to burn somebody else, because I'm only coming around to this now, but when you forgive someone, it's not saying, okay, your actions they were acceptable. It's not saying that at all. But what you're saying is, I'm not giving you the power to control what's going on in my head, any longer. And it's so freeing. And it's not like you have to go around and say, oh, you're forgived and we're best friends. You don't even have to, speak to that person, but forgiving them, knowing that you're yourself. You don't even have to say it to them, but saying, do you know what?
Agreed.
I forgive them. I'm not going to allow it to take control. But I loved as well when you were talking about, when I said the concept about you get to decide your future. And yes, obviously the things in the past aren't fair, but you said the word empower. And through listening to the podcast that I've heard you on in the past, and kind of what I want to do with my clients, I think it crosses over very nicely. I was actually listening to one on the way in the car this morning, and I was like, that's what I'm trying to do. What I get from you is that you're not going into a room or meeting up with one of your clients to fix them. You're going to empower them.
Absolutely.
And like this crosses over, like your job is with mental health and all of these things. My job is with, body composition. But come here, Padraig, I love it, because I heard you say, and this is what I say to clients, you said something like, my business model is shit, because I'm trying to get people to a place where they don't need me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do with coaching. It's not come to me and you lose a stone in a month and then go find it again once we're not working together. It's like, what do you fucking need to do in your life to change your body? Your body is a result of how you live your life.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you do with your clients as well.
Yeah.
You're not like trying to fix them, but you're trying to, I suppose, empower them, give them the tools to fix themselves.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I think these roles intertwine, and most of my people, my friends in that kind of coaching space, they offer tons of psychological support, because they're that listening ear, they're that support network. And we cannot divide our physical health and our mental health. They are not separate. They are intertwined. When people come to me and they're struggling with their mental health, it's movement, it's enhancing their body, it's giving them empowerment over their body, making them feel good. Exercise is probably one of the number one tools that I would lean into to support people with anxiety, self-harm, actually any neurodiversity. It's all movement, it's key. So these two are intertwined. We shouldn't ever separate both of them. And if our bodies feel like crap, our minds are going to feel like crap, and that's like, so it's so important to intertwine. But yes, the business model, our role is to work ourselves out of a job. Like, we know we've done our job when we never see our clients again.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's sad in a way, but it's just, so that for me, when I first meet a client, my job is to empower them to the level of skill where they can see that it's all in their control. I don't want a young person coming into me and feel that therapy can only happen in a space where he or she is with me, that it can happen when they're outdoors, where they're taking charge of their own life, where we're creating goals and we're leaning into it. Most of the work that I do is in the community, in resources that they can actually lean into. If that's gyms, climbing walls, stand-up paddle boards, whatever that looks like, for them to be able to lean into a life and build evidence. So they have an abundance of evidence to say, I can, and this is what makes me feel good, and I'm able for. It's not about just talking about it, it's about the action of the doing. That is the greatest trajectory in therapeutic recovery, where we're building evidence. If someone comes into me in a really low state, I'm not there to tell them they're brilliant and they're going to be fine. I am there to pick apart, challenge maybe some of the pessimistic attitudes, and challenge maybe some of the negative thoughts they might have about themselves, and enhance some of the optimistic side. Talk about their strengths, put a lens on the areas of their life that they are good at, and how do we blow them out and get them bigger and bigger and bigger, so that they can kind of see, I am able and I am. Most young people and adults, I work with adults as well, come through the door and they just feel like they can't, and they have an abundance of evidence to say that they can't. They're not in school, they're not working, they don't have a relationship, they're like, their health is really, really poor. All the evidence, everything they're seeing is absolutely correct. They are struggling. So baby steps, and I think these are really important baby steps where you can create a goal that they can achieve, and then that enhances that belief system. Don't create massive goals, like someone coming in wanting to lose 10 kg and you're like, perfect, we'll get that out of you in 2 weeks. Like, it's nonsense. Yeah. And they'll fail at the 2-week mark, and then they'll be like, okay, well then obviously that the system doesn't work. So we just start with what we have and baby steps, and everybody's journey is different. Everybody has a different level of resilience. Everybody has a different level of motivation. Everybody has a different drive. Everybody has different supports around them, resources around them, different mindsets. So no one's journey through recovery is the same, and I'm sure that's exactly the same in weight loss and what that looks like, body composition.
There is so much there. Honestly, I could talk about this for days and days. Honestly, but you mentioned something there about your mental health and your physical health. They're not two separate things.
Not at all.
And I couldn't agree more. Like, people don't realize, the benefits of just getting outside and moving your body. And people think, oh, exercise, I have to be smashing it in the gym, I have to be fucking hiking mountains. It's not. It's go for a little stroll every morning. Like, I've said it on the podcast so many times. If I didn't get out, and I mean a half an hour walk, like, that's it. But if I didn't get out every single day into nature, like, I would be a horrible mother. I'd be a horrible partner. And I know that. And when clients start work with me, that's one thing I'm like, because it's all about step goals and this, that, and the other. And yes, they're important because it's evidence that you've moved your body. Mm-hmm. But people are like, I've got a treadmill. And I'm like, throw the treadmill in the bin. Get yourself outside,
It's because of all the other benefits that are coming with that.
Exactly. It's not, I'm not getting you outside to walk every single day to reduce your body fat. Kind of I am.
Yeah.
But what I'm actually doing is making you feel better. When you feel better, you're probably going to make better food choices. Yeah. You're probably going to go to bed earlier. Yeah. And all of these different things. Your relationship's going to be better, so therefore you're going to be happier. All of these things are interconnected, but we look at them as two separate things. And you also mentioned about evidence. I can be quite firm on this, I suppose, online. A lot of people say to me, Padraig, they say, I love your no bullshit approach. And they're like, you're a fucking bitch. But I'm all about stacking the evidence in your back pocket for you to tell yourself that you're the person you say you are, And I have I have an analogy for everything, but I have a great analogy for this, right? And I always say to clients, you have two friends. And one of them, is kind of always late, never shows up on time, is always kind of in a rush, unreliable. The other friend is always on time. You can trust them 100%. You get a phone call from the school saying your kid is sick, you're away. Who are you going to ring to collect your kid? Like, clearly, who are you going to ring? Why? Because friend B, you have the evidence that friend is always on time, always shows up, and you can trust them. But you're trying to trust yourself in terms of fitness, in terms of all of these things, when you've no evidence. When was the last time you moved your body? So why, but people, you said the word extreme, and I love this. People think that their actions for change need to be extreme. And it's the complete opposite, because extreme results lead to extreme regress. You just need to start. When that alarm goes off at 6 a.m. in the morning, wouldn't it be so much easier to roll over and press snooze? Yes, but you're then showing yourself that you're that person who skips the gym. You're the person who, goes to get fast food every single day. But it starts so small.
So small.
And I say to clients, little by little, a little bit becomes a lot. And that's how change happens, But I think, and you mentioned it earlier about evolution, and I could talk for that on days as well, because I a part of my course in college was evolutionary biology. And we've evolved so quickly that our feckin' brains can't keep up with us. So we think we need to do everything now, because back then, we had to find food now to survive, and then we got food, we ate it all. So we think that, subconsciously it's extreme approaches work. But when you start to, and my last podcast was all about this, was when you start shifting your expectations and start saying to yourself, you know what, instead of losing the 10 pounds in a month that you constantly tell yourself, you lose it this month, you find it next month, you lose it this month, you find it next month. How about you change your expectations and you say to yourself, I'm actually going to start small. And even if it takes me a year to lose this 10 kg, I'm going to do it in a way that I can sustain it and that I can maintain it long term, because this is a quote I use the whole time now. But I've just come up with this recently. Maybe I heard it. I don't know if I stole this, but I've said it so much I don't know if it's my own now. But I say the fast way is the slow way, because the slow way is the only way.
Love it. I'm going to steal that.
It's the only way for long-term change, no matter if it's mental health. I feel like shit, I don't want to feel like shit. Well, you're not going to do that overnight. I'm overweight, I don't want to be overweight. Well, you're not going to do that overnight. And if you expect yourself to, that's when you end up back at square one, because you failed.
I agree.
Shift those expectations. And I want to chat to you a little bit about, because this leads nicely in, to happiness. So people think that happiness is when I get my degree, when I get the full-time job, when I find the love of my life, when I have kids, all of these things, everyone can insert X into that space. Yeah. And that's the little clip that I saw you on Coleman's podcast. You were talking about, the I'll be happy when fallacy, and how we postpone our happiness to a future date in the past. And I could, Padraig. That's my landlord's name. I said it to Mouse today. I could go back, and do a timeline for you of all of these events and how I pushed my happiness until then. So, in school, I was telling you about, I was the people pleaser. I was the A grade kid because I was trying to, feel accepted by being the best, So in school, I studied my arse off. I got A's. I got an amazing result. I done an amazing, course in college, got qualified. Then it was like, so during that time in school, it was like, I'll be happy when I get into a really good college. So I got into the best college in Ireland. I'll be happy when I get it. No, I'll be happy when I get a job. Got the job teaching. I was a secondary school teacher. When I was teaching, I was like, I'll be happy when, I become deputy and then principal. And like, they were even talking about that in my school, because I was, I was one of the best teachers. All the parents were raving about me because I fucking had to be in my head. Then it was, I'll be happy when me and Mo finally get a house and stop renting. We're still renting. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? I'll be happy when me and Mo get married. We have kids. And I sat down one day and I was like, all of these things that I'm talking about and that I'm postponing my happiness to, they're actually my life. Oh, shit. I'm wasting my life. Mic drop.
It's really powerful though, isn't it? To look back and kind of go, shit, that's however many years, 13, 14 years where I was just chasing something.
Yeah.
And I missed that. And I have been absolutely guilty for that in many chapters of my life where I'm like, oh, it'll be better when. And I've missed keeping my eyes open for the things that were there in front of me. And looking at the research now, I have a master's in positive psychology and coaching. So we kind of dive deep into this component of what happiness is, how do we cultivate optimism. And we were asked to describe our perfect day. And for me, I described my perfect day. And it was getting up in the morning, cooking pancakes with Kaya. It was moving my body in some capacity and just doing something that made me feel good, whether that was cooking, hanging out, doing painting. That's my perfect day. There's no money spent in that. And my perfect day I can have so regularly. But And that's my perfect day isn't this graduating from a degree. My perfect day isn't this amazing concert or festival. It's being connected with people that I love and getting to move my body. And that is actually freely available to me all the fucking time. So stop trying to look for something, like describe your perfect day and see if you can live it. And chances are it's pretty straightforward and it's probably in front of your face. So, I seen the research and I've looked at everyone's journey through college. Like when they get their paper, I've the 2 undergraduates and the masters, and I could see each time when people got the paper, they're like, is this fucking it?
Is this it?
I had 4 years, I put a hard graph for this and I thought it was going to be something better. And it wasn't, because they worked really their 4 hours. But through those times, they had all of these social connections, all of these, and they were just kind of wishing it away. I just wanted to go away. I just wanted to go away. Same as kids. You have kids and you're like, oh, this part is going to be better when it's going to be better when, and then it's over. So like, just open your eyes. It's in the everyday. It's in the coffee we drink in the morning. It's in the social connections. It's in the slagging down. It's in all of those moments that we have that are freely available to us. And it's right here. So yeah, stop chasing. And the research is clear on this. Like, I think it's really important that we have goals in our life, but happiness comes in the chase. It actually comes in the obtaining of the goals. So as you're moving in that direction, your happiness increases. It decreases when we actually get it. So like, no, I'm not saying don't create goals. Make loads of them. Make ones that are really meaningful for you and enjoy the journey, because it's the happiness is there.
Yeah, it's the journey. It's not the destination.
100%.
You know, I swear, there's just so much there. I'm like, I can't get to everything, but I just want to talk about everything, because what you're saying is just amazing. But when you were saying there about describing your perfect day, I'm literally going to take that and I'm going to put that into my coaching as a call to action.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you just said it there. And I think I said it in my last podcast, I was like, ask yourself, when are you most happy? And I'm guessing a lot of people who have kids will say, when I'm with my kids. So why the fuck are you breaking your back to earn so much money to spend it on things when you're telling me that the thing that makes you happy is right in front of you all along? Yeah. And I talked about, I'm not going to say the whole story again, but one of Mo's friends, she was a young kid, same age as our girls, and she was offered a massive promotion in her job, right? She works in a bank, and massive increase in salary, probably double, blah, blah, blah. A lot of more work commitments, a lot more traveling to work. She said no, because I want to see my kid grow up, you know? Yeah. And only last night I posted on Instagram, it was a little video of me bringing my 2 girls to their Gaelic training. And I just said, this is every single week, Tuesday evening is the best part of my week. And I just said, that really is how simple my life is. Like, ask yourself what makes you happy. And when you realize that it's in the every single day, as you said, for me, like I love my first cup of coffee in the morning. I love getting outside into nature. We live in the Wicklow Mountains, maybe going for a dip. It's so simple. But when I was chasing all the things, I was chasing success. I was chasing money. Yeah. I was chasing external validation. When I was chasing all of these things, I was at my least happy. I was most miserable. To now, when I'm not chasing those things and I'm just trying to, this is a big thing for me, and I think I'm so much better at it, but I'm still working on it, is living in the present moment. I find it hard to sit with myself. I find it hard to quiet my mind and just be present, but I am working on it, because I think that, as you said, happiness is in the everyday. Yeah. And I love the part, because I'm doing actually this with a lot of my clients at the moment. This is what I'm working on. I'm like, what you said, I'm like, I'm not saying don't have goals. Have goals. It's amazing to have goals, but don't put your happiness off until you achieve those goals. You can be a work in progress and happy at the same time. And like, I think a lot of it stems from societal norms and maybe familial norms as we grow up. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. I was chasing all the things that society told me would make me happy, but I was fucking miserable. Yeah. You know? So a big thing for me that I'm trying to do is just, through this podcast as well, is just bring awareness to people to just look up out of the fucking rat race that we find ourselves in, and ask yourself, is this what I actually want from life? One of my coaches, right, she messaged me yesterday and she said, I'm not going to mention the client's name, she's like, check out this client's message on WhatsApp, right? So I went back and I had my clients do a call to action where they had to tell me what was the most important things in their life, and what are the everyday actions that they take that are in line with them. So you're telling me this is the most important thing to you, but your day is telling me different, you know? And one of my clients came back and she just wrote out a big, massive essay about how she's only realised that her job is just making her so miserable. She's, only realising that she doesn't need to have, she's in a massive, CEO of a company, and she's fucking just gone and handed in her notice. And she's like, I just want to simplify my life. I don't want to be spending 2 hours a day in traffic either way. So stressed with work. She's like, what really, is it that makes me happy? And it's just, I had another, sorry, I never stop talking.
Keep going.
I had another person on the podcast as well, Michelle. And we were talking about this. She's an online coach as well. And so many people have like left partners, left jobs after working with us. And she was like, shit, Kellie, my husband calls me the divorcer. Because I think so much of us just live our lives, being hopefully not miserable. I love the quote, most people choose misery over uncertainty, because we're so, and for me, I've talked to you about that. I feel the need to control, know that the future is going to be okay, but that's impossible because we're all moving parts. We can only control ourselves, not anything else. But I just talk about this for days. It's just incredible. Yeah. It's just realizing that the happiness of your life is in the present moment. Yeah. And, that yes, have goals. And, you mightn't be where you want to be in a certain area. So you might be killing it in your career, but you're fucking depressed about how you look in the mirror, So maybe, focus a bit more on that and maybe put those goals and then again, your goal, but are your actions in line with your goals, and asking yourself these questions. But just a huge thing for me is realizing that happiness is in the now. Because I've not wasted, because it's a learning curve. Yeah. Everything's a learning curve. But I've spent so much of my life putting off my happiness. And like the most important things to me are my girls. And you said something earlier as well about when we have kids, we say, oh, I can't wait till they're in school because I can't wait. I only said to Mo the other day, we are no longer, well, me anyway, I'm not controlling you, but I'm no longer going to say about the girls, I can't wait until. That's not, I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. Because, as we mentioned before we went on air, things are hard with kids, but it gets, it never stops getting hard. Yeah. The hard thing just turns into a different thing.
Absolutely.
And the other one goes, So like, bottles are a pain in the arse when you're going out, but when the bottles are gone, finding healthy meals, it just
they become beer bottles when they become teenagers.
Jesus, no, don't. I can't even cope thinking about that. Yeah. But happiness comes from the now.
You said so much there. Loads of, I couldn't agree more. The actions aligning with our values of who we are, that concept of people kind of chasing the career. And I think people can chase the career because they can control that and they can see and they can progress. And the other aspects of their life are often, you can't control that. You can't control relationships. You can't control other parts. So it becomes, we can get engrossed in a career and we're getting the validation of being kind of, you're doing great, you're doing really well. But our career is a component of it. And I do think we need to put energy into it and pick the right one for us. And when I say the right one, does it fulfill our lives? Does it give us meaning in our lives? Does it give us, and when I say meaning, it doesn't have to be a meaningful career, but it gives you enough financial resources that you can live a meaningful life. Does it pull you away from the things that are really meaningful for you? Are you working 60, 70 hours? They looked back to happiness. They looked at happiness when your happiness will actually decrease when your salary goes, I think it's over 100 grand, 110,000, because of the pressures then that become on you from that employment. So expectations change dramatically for someone who is a CEO versus someone who is a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. So it's looking at that. And we fall into this life and this expectation. And I would see a lot of people with a lot of wealth and a lot of background that they're working so hard to pay for a life that they can't enjoy. So they're working so hard to pay for this huge house that they can't live in, pay for this beautiful car that they don't get a chance to drive, pay for, I heard Bill Burr speak about his success as a comedian, and he said, like, I couldn't believe it, and I finally got a place that I could get a pool. And he's like, a pool that I could never swim in because I was working so fucking hard. So just be really careful of what we're running towards, because the goalposts keep changing, because when we obtain it, we feel like it's not enough. And maybe I could do a little bit more. What if I'm here? It's like that concept of that person that drives into a or sails in with his $7 million yacht, and then he's in his element. He feels really happy until he sees the other person coming in with a $9 million yacht, and then his happiness decreases, and now he wants what that person has. So it's like whatever you think it is, and when you reach that, and that you're going to be happy, then chances are you bypassed all the beautiful moments that were right there in front of you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The goalposts is always shifting.
Always.
And that comes, that crosses over into my job as well, because when people come to me, they're like, Kellie, I want to lose a stone. And when I do, that's it. Like, that's all I've ever wanted to do in my life. They lose the stone, and now it's, I want to tone. I want to run a marathon. So, it's so true. The goalposts always shift. So stop anchoring your happiness in something in the future. And you mentioned there about, I love that. I was talking to Siobhan O'Hagan on this podcast as well. She said that she lived in an apartment, right? And she wanted to do this corporate job and climb up the ladder. And she said, my neighbour or something, he was really high in his job and he owned this amazing BMW. And she was like, one day I sat there and I was like, I've never seen him drive it because he's no fucking time. And that's exactly what you were saying. Why get all of this money to buy all of these things that we're never, ever going to use? And I love this, this quote. I heard it somewhere. It's like, getting more money doesn't solve your problems. It just solves your money problems.
Yeah.
Everything else, isn't solved. And I know, like, it's people say it's easy for you to say if you're not struggling financially. And I'm not talking about, not having any money. Obviously, we need money to survive. And you said it there, like, you're not saying you have to have an amazing job, but you have to have a job that allows you to live a happy life, But I think that's the problem. People don't know what happy life is for them because they don't take the time or they don't have the awareness to ask themselves that question. And that's what I'm trying to bring, and that's what you're bringing is like simplicity. Happiness is in the now, but you just don't realize that because, and it crosses over into this area I wanted to chat to you about as well, because I truly believe that, well, society is just getting more and more fast paced, but when we grow up, a lot of societal norms are shoved down our throats. And a lot of the time, it can be familial norms as well. So like in high-flying families where we're, doctors and lawyers and, they can, I suppose, put pressures maybe on their kid's shoulder. I felt that because I had given myself that role as the clever one in my family. My siblings are going to hate me now, but my granny used to always say, she's the clever one. She could read the dictionary since she was 3, right? She said that to a bloody teacher who called to see how I was getting on in school. It's embarrassing me. But there was this pressure on my shoulders to prove that I could achieve and go to the best college and all of these things. So there's a bit of that, maybe I put them on myself, but some people can get them from, family. But I think all of us, no matter where we live, can get them from society. So when you're in school, you're told to get the good job. If the teacher asks you, what do you want to be when you're older? And you're in 6th year and you say, an actor, you fucking hell, what does he, you know what I mean? So all of these societal norms, they're telling you to chase, more money, bigger job, better career, bigger house, bigger car. And I just feel so, sorry for kids that believe this story, because that's what I believed in. So we chase these things that we think will make us happy, but they're not the real things. But it's hard to get to the point where you're asking that question because you've blinkers. You're going through life with not looking up. And I listened to this podcast. Do you know Mo Gaudat? I'll have to send you, you'd please. Love this episode, right? But he's like the happiness expert and he's just amazing. But he had this guy, his name is Yuri, and he's from the Netherlands. And he was talking, I'm not going to, explain the whole episode, but basically he was a physician. He was a medical doctor, had a massive big practice, like real successful. His father was a doctor as well who worked for him, right? And he realized one day, this isn't making me happy. He left, medicine, and his father really did not accept this. His family didn't accept it, all of these things. But he said in that moment, he made 2 decisions. And one decision was, when I look back, when I'm old, on my deathbed, and I look back on the timeline of my life, I am going to be able to say that I was the person that I wanted to be and not the person that everybody else wanted me to be. And the second thing he said was, I am going to, from now on, make decisions based out of desire and not out of fear. And when I listened to that episode, I just thought it was so powerful. The thing about desire and fear, I heard you talk about this in a podcast before. A lot of people can be people pleasers, right? And they're saying yes to people just to, you know, please them and to feel accepted and all of these things. And that was me. And I think a lot of people can find it hard to say no. But it's such a superpower. It's like, no, sorry, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to that event, you know? And it's saying no to other people, but it's saying yes to yourself.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to do, you know? And I think it's an Irish thing. Not only an Irish thing, but it's very like people pleaser. Do what you're told, you know.
It's human, I think. Like we're, because, and I do think Irish people are people pleasers in general, depending on your trauma response as well. You can have that fawn response where I would have had that kind of component where it's like wanting to be liked, wanting to be validated, wanting to make friends. But Gabor says it so beautifully. He's like, we have two human needs. One is to be our authentic self and the other one is for connection. But we will always sacrifice authenticity for connection, because without connection, we can't survive. So we are looking in a world, and the world is giving us validation, so connecting us to people and people saying you're doing a great job, we're doing this, we're doing that, and that will always be our stronger need, to live a life to prove to other people that we're worth something versus being our authentic self, because there's huge risk with being your authentic self. If you were rejected, how does that make you feel when you truly put yourself out there? It's where you can really actually have authentic connection, is being your true self, because someone sees you versus a version that you're always putting forward, because then they fall in love with that version and not actually who you are. But we will always sacrifice our authenticity to get connection and validation from other people. And it really takes a fight to lean out of that space. It isn't easy, but it's just a human need, because without connection, we die. So we have to have it. Authenticity, we won't die without it.
That's incredible, connecting those two things, because it's so funny. All these words that you just said there, I've like written them down. Authentic self, fawn response, persona, all of these things. And in that podcast I was telling you about, he was talking about, you know, at the end of my life, when I look back, I can say I was the person I wanted to be. And I think about that all the time in terms of authentic self. And I'm trying to work towards that as much as I can. And I love how you said there, you can never be truly, it's hard to take, but it's so true.
Yeah.
So he says in the podcast, the host said, and do you feel like your authentic self? And he said, you can't be 100% your authentic self.
Yeah.
But it's working towards that, and, you know, not feeling, obviously the fawn response, pleasing other people and all of these things. But I feel, and I can relate this to my career, I feel that you can bring your best to the world when you're pushing towards that authentic self. And I can see it in your career as well.
Yeah.
Like, you worked in the social system and then you branched off into and now you're doing the most meaningful work for you.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it was the same. I love teaching. I've never stopped loving teaching. But when I was at secondary school, I just didn't love what I was teaching, because my kids went into a leaving cert and they spat out all of this information, and then they're like, whoa, let's go in the beard. They don't care for that information. They just cared to get it to where they wanted to be. Whereas now I genuinely feel like I'm changing, like helping people to change their lives, you know. So I left teaching, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done, because I grew up with that mindset, steady job. And so many of my family said, you're mad, you're leaving this steady career. And I'll never forget ringing up that principal, and I was like, shit, now it's all on me, you know. But it was a step towards that authentic self, and I'm now closer, and I'll keep trying to be closer. But again, it's all of this awareness stuff. We're just not aware of these things, and it's just trying to bring awareness to that. And you mentioned earlier about receiving love or persona, and I love that quote. The persona cannot receive love it can only receive praise. And it's like, I spent so many years of my life trying to be this person so that people would accept me. But they didn't love Kellie, because that's not me.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned rejection, and in that podcast he said, and I'll never forget this line, he said, it's not if, but when you're going to be judged and rejected for being your authentic self. Please. He said, are you willing to be rejected to be who you truly are? Like, please. Please.
Yeah, that's such a powerful sentence.
Wow.
Because when that happens, it will crush your heart. It will be when you put yourself fully vulnerable out there and then you're rejected. What that instills is that belief system that I should never fully be myself. So, and when I speak about evidence, to create that authentic self, we're looking at those safe spaces where we can start opening up in those kind of secure bases, whether that be with our wives or whatever that looks like, our kids, and we can lean in and be our authentic self and see that is accepted. If you're looking to have that secure attachment with your kids, it's accepting them for who they are, loving them, loving all the emotions that come with it. You don't have to love behavior, but you have to love the emotions that come with it. And they're trying to figure out the world, and it's usually through conversation pieces, sitting down with them, kind of problem solving with them. But they're kids. They're all over the shop. They're crying. They're banging. You've two probably lunatics at home that are running all over the place. But they use that space to actually start figuring out the world. And the more they act in that way, actually, the more learning opportunities that are there. So if you're looking and you're a parent, mind yourself, mind your mental health. Start leaning into opening up that opportunity for kids to really express who they are, their unique, quirky, weird self, whatever that is like. Praise them, bring that out, because we probably didn't have that growing up, and we probably still don't. We're probably told you should get that pensionable job. When I left social care, I worked in residential homes with teenagers for about 8 years. I also worked in a family assessment unit for some time as well. I remember the week I left, and it was a pensionable job. But there was huge levels of incidents. The cars were getting smashed. People were getting badly assaulted. And I remember my manager saying, the OT coach is picking up, and this is a business that is really meaningful for me and it makes sense. And he was like, how could you leave a pensionable job? And I was like, look around. People are assaulted, battered. But they were blinded by this pension. And I actually, like a lot of people who are thinking about becoming OTs, I have 18, 19-year-olds who are thinking about the course. They might come and speak to me and ask me some questions. What's the course like? And I would ask them, would you go private or would you go public? Would you start your own practice? And they're like, oh no, I really want a pension. Like they're 19 years of age, 18, and they're thinking about, because everyone said, get a pensionable job.
This is what they've been told.
Yeah, like as if that is, you have to work for 45 years in a job that makes you completely unhappy in the best years of your life for a pension that you won't be able to enjoy because you're going to die young because you've been miserable and unhealthy for 45 years. I'm just like, it is, but it's a story. It's a story that everyone says, and a story that they get praised when they're due. Oh, brilliant, you got a pensionable job. I'm delighted for you. I'm like, there's a huge cost to that. So like we work, I would say, like very similar. Like we're probably picking up the laptop in the evenings, doing a bit of work here, our work-life balance mightn't be perfect, but I work more hours for sure. But my job itself brings so much meaning and purpose. It doesn't feel like it is. It is an excitement to working. If I had to, someone says, will you come in for 2 or 3 hours when I was off? I'd be like, oh no, I'd be kind of allergic, but I love what I do. So my job itself brings a ton of meaning, which is really helpful. And I know I've digressed now to two or three different points. But
no, but you said it there. Like, I think if people were to ask themselves that question about retirement, because I say you're waiting until in your worst health. Yeah. You are waiting until you are in your worst health to start living your life. How many people do you hear, I'm going to pick up golf. I'm going to travel the world. You're waiting to start living when you're in your worst health. Yeah. And all of these amazing years of your life, like I heard on line the other day, and people say it now, it's like in 20 years, you would give anything to be back in this day with this health, this youth. Yeah. But now you're waiting till down the line to live. And
if the research is clear on this, if you're suffering and you're in a career path that is damaging your health, those years, those retirement years that you're waiting for will be much shorter. You're not going to live healthy, strong until you're in your 90s. You're going to be quite poor health. So that pension that you've got when you're 65, which they may push it out until 70, you're only going to get 5 years of enjoyment. It'll help fund some of the medical conditions that you're going to live with. So like just find meaning and purpose. And your job, it doesn't have to be this amazing career. It can be any career that's giving you meaning and purpose. So it gives you money, it gives you freedom. If it's a part-time job in a cafe and you are loving life because you get to spend it doing all of these that is exactly where you need to be. That is exactly where you need to be, because it gives you meaning and purpose to spend time with people you love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like one of my biggest values now is to be able to spend my day as I wish. You know, it's not money anymore. It's not anything. It's just like, so I've said this before, but if I was still teaching when our girls arrived, right? So Mo carried the girls. They were 7 weeks premature. They were in the NICU for 2 weeks because of laws and stuff like that, you know, about taking time off work or whatever. If I was still teaching, I would have missed that time.
Wow.
You know, I took 3 months unpaid off because now I know I was in a privileged position, but I'd worked my fucking ass off to get there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? People,
Yeah.
oh, it's lucky for her. Hold on a second. I worked 16-hour days for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Mo's like, I've never seen someone work so much. But as you said, I fucking love what I do.
I love what I do as well. So it doesn't feel like it as much. But to take note that we make sacrifices on the other side. You know, we do work.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
reap the rewards of that.
And I spoke about this before. Like, I'm not telling anyone after listening to this episode to go and quit your job.
Yep.
But I am saying to start putting your ladder against the right wall. And that's what I did when I was teaching, right? So I was in my final year. I didn't know it was my final year, but I had said, you know what, I'm going to start a personal training and a nutrition course on the side. I was teaching Monday to Friday, traveling to Dublin from Wicklow. And then I was studying that in DCU Saturday, Sunday, every 7 days a week for a year. And it's like, that wasn't easy. But what I was doing in that situation was I was getting, little by little, getting closer to where I wanted to be until I got the qualifications. And then I was able to leave that job. So yes, you might be stuck in your current job now and there's no way out, but start little tiny steps, you know, in the direction of where you want to be. But I believe that we're all sold this. You said it earlier, everyone's saying, but I want the pension. We're sold this story. And it's so damaging because, as I said, we end up living our lives working for more money, working to invest in the pension, working to get the house. And then you get to the end of your life and you're like, oh, shit, that never made me happy. And now I'm too fucking old to, you know, actually do the things that I wanted to do. And I think living, you said it there, you don't have to have like what's considered an amazing job, as long as it gives you the freedom to do what you like and you're not miserable. Like, that's what, I was on a podcast before, it's called the Be Human podcast, and they basically get people on to tell their story. And at the end, they ask the question, what's a meaningful life to you, or something like that. And I said, it's to live a life of meaning, whatever that means to you. But it's realizing what it means to you, you know, because we could get 20, 19-year-olds and sit them in the room and say, you know, what's meaningful to you? And they'll say, oh, I can't wait to get this job and that job. And I worked in a lot of private schools, and, you know, a lot of the kids in there would have, as I said, you know, high-flying, what we consider parents. And all of them would have this massive pressure on their shoulders to be this type of person. And it's so damaging. And like, for me, one of my biggest things is, and I've even caught relatives saying it, you know, they've said to Holly and Willow, my 2 girls, they've been like, oh, when you grow up, you're going to be accountant and this, that and the other. And I've stopped them, you know, I know they're, well, actually, I was going to say too young to realise, but they're not. And I've said, no, they're going to be whatever they want to be. You know what I mean? And when they come to me and they're like, Mom, I hate school, and obviously they have to get their, you know, leaving cert or whatever, I'm going to say to them, like, do whatever the fuck you want to do. And it's about, like, when we're 17 and we're kids in school and we're supposed to know what you know, when I was 30, I only started realizing what I wanted to do. So I think, you know, something that I'll be telling my girls anyway is to do everything. Do everything. Go on your travel. If you want to go and see if teaching's for you, go do it. If it's not for you, you can change, though, you know? So it's getting out of the stuck mindset. You don't have to do all of these things just because you're told that you have to do them. But bringing it back to how we started this conversation, we said that a lot of the times doing what you want to do comes with rejection, comes with judgment. And I was going to ask you the question of, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, you know, rejection from people? Is it that you need to adjust your environment? Because, you know, I only realized in the last couple of years that it's okay to change your mind on, I suppose, who you want to be, but also who you choose to surround yourself with. And that can be very uncomfortable. Let go. That's exactly.
I'm from Shannon originally, and I moved to Cork maybe 13, 14 years ago. So like I have a completely different background. Now my life is very academic focused, where when I was in my hometown and my home environment, I was an early school leaver. Lots of negative boyish style bollocksy behaviour, and that identity is nearly kept when you are sitting in the same surroundings. So I think I really massively encourage moving your surrounding to find out who you are, because you come away from the voices that everyone keeps telling you you're going to be an accountant, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. So for me, I moved to Portugal when I was 19, and I just put my hand out and started introducing myself. Hey, I am. And then I started finding out who I actually wanted to introduce myself as. What was the type of man that I actually wanted to be? And through that, I started really developing an idea of, it makes me feel really good. I actually really want to be this person. And versus, oh sure, he's that lad that he does or whatever. So I think shifting your environment, you'll learn so much about yourself. Spending a bit of time alone, which is a really difficult thing to do for people because it's super uncomfortable. But I think that makes you question things a little bit. And then obviously finding somebody who you can bounce those ideas off and kind of instill that. Like, I think it's baby steps of being open with people, saying this is something that I want to do, this is something and picking your audience. If you know that people are going to reject the idea, maybe they're not the right people to engage those conversations with. And some people will reject the idea because seeing you living your life will make them question theirs and make them feel worse. So be selective on those people. You kind of know who I'm talking about already.
They'll pop into your mind straight away.
Straight away. Like, I know if I'm at a space, there's one or two of my close friends that I could go to straight away and I could just open up and they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. They'll either sit and just listen or they'll give me whatever I need in that. And then there's other people that will not. And yeah.
I think a lot of the time, and again, this can sound quite harsh, when you take action and you start to improve your life and it's visible because you're actually starting to fucking be happy for once, it can remind a lot of people of their inaction.
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I love the quote by Alex Hormozy: people want to see you do well, but not better than them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one. But you said there about, I loved how when I asked you, what can you do? You said change your environment. I love that because I never really thought about that, but it's so true because we're stuck in echo chambers.
Yeah.
We grow up being told we're this type of person and we're going to believe that forever because we're constantly told that. You know, I talked about it with my clients. I'm like, if you love rugby and you think it's the best sport ever, you're going to be surrounded by people who love rugby and you're constantly going to be telling each other how amazing it is. And you're never going to change your opinion on that, you know. But the reason I asked that is because such a powerful thing, and you said the word identity there, it's okay to change who you think you are. And when I was, you know, about 20 years of age, I was overweight, I was unfit, I was unhealthy, I hated myself, but I was telling myself that I'm this disgusting person, so that's how I was playing it out. But through, you know, working on myself and all of these things, I'm now the opposite. Like, if you'd have told me back then, Kellie, you're going to be this fitness online person, I would have said you are absolutely out of your mind, you know. But I've changed my identity in such a massive spectrum. But I think people don't realize that it's okay to do that and are, you know, afraid to go against the grain, because if you live in, you know, this family who are these type of people, to go against that, it's uncomfortable.
You sacrifice the connection piece.
You sacrifice the connection piece for acceptance, for authentic self.
And do you see like your happiness has increased now that you've like leaned into this identity versus the person that you were before?
Oh, massively, because you're working towards that authentic self. That's what I mean. It's okay.
So this is who you were always supposed to be. You just were living a life that wasn't you.
Yeah. Living a persona, receiving praise, but all I ever wanted was love. But I could never get that because I was never the person who I was.
Read the tissues.
Wow.
That's really hard.
Wow. Yeah. This is deep. But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah. I got you on here because I was like, I need to learn from Padraig.
Yeah. No, this is so good.
It's so valuable. But listen, I think we're way over the hour. I want to be careful of your time, but I sent you a list of things I wanted to chat about, and I'm like, it's okay if we don't get on to all of them because there's just so much there. Yeah. But that means that I will have to have you back.
I'd be delighted to come back, Kellie. Absolutely delighted. This is brilliant. Lovely conversation.
So much. And I think,
thanks for me.
like, I think when people listen to this, they can just start thinking, like, even just you said earlier, actually at the beginning of the podcast, even just giving someone hope.
Yeah.
that they can change and maybe start working towards living the life that they want and not that others want for them.
If they believe they can, they don't need tons of resources around them. They go finding them. So like you can put all the best supports in, the best psychologist, the best coach, the best therapist to support somebody who doesn't want to change. It means nothing. But if that person really has hope and believes change, they'll go and find that person. They'll find, and you know what? They actually don't really need to lean into that much to the supports because they're going to do it on their own either way. So hope is key. We can spark hope, and I hope that this conversation will do that for some people.
Thank you so much.
No,
it has been, I feel like we've been sitting here for 5
Yeah.
minutes. Incredible.
I know, I can't believe I actually went through everything. So
Cheers.
that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kellie.